I joined the App Exchange team when it was less than a year old, and then took it from sort of nothing to the giant behemoth that it is today. And the App Exchange, for people that don't know, is Salesforce's app store, right? So the entire enterprise ecosystem of applications that attach to Salesforce and that help people basically run their entire business now. So, so I did that. I ran a couple other businesses there as well. I ran a business called Desk.com, which was low-end customer support for SMBs, really. And then I ran the mobile platform, as well as a number of other things. One of the things I'm probably best known for is me and my friend went to Mark Benioff and told him he wasn't paying the women the same as the men, which sort of started the equal pay audit that ran through Salesforce and then tech, and then ultimately sort of became something that all of corporate America is now somewhat accountable for. So, so that's that. So, I mean, how we
Layla kind of glosses over that, but literally she and Cindy are responsible for the wave of equal pay that went and started in the tech industry and went beyond. So like, bravo, that takes a moment. Like that took a lot of bravery, because that took a lot of courage to go say, you need to pay me more.
Absolutely. And I just want to acknowledge and thank you for being a stand for all of us, seriously. So I think that
was initially very selfishly motivated. I wanted more money, right? I mean, initially I was like, what the heck? Like, this isn't, but yes. We didn't even really know it was, a bold thing to do. It just felt like the next right thing to do. But different story. Anyway, so like just shy of 2 years ago in May of 2019, I left Salesforce. I'd been getting ready to leave Salesforce. And before that, Malin had started Operator Collective. So I think, Malin can speak to her way about it, but we both came to a similar thesis, and I'll explain how I came to mine. Salesforce bought a lot of companies, right? Acquisition. Every time a company got bought, I was engaged in some way because I ran the ecosystem. So there's implications when you do acquisitions in your ecosystem. So, we'd buy these great companies. The founders would come in. More often than not, they were white males. They would hang out for 2 years. They'd vest. They'd leave. They'd go become venture capitalists. They would then call the white male execs at Salesforce and be like, hey, join my fund. Hey, angel invest in this. Hey, do this. Hey, do that. No one was calling me. So for me, it sort of became like, what is going on here? And it started smelling like another area where we're being cut out of an income stream, which is essentially exactly what it was. But finally, someone left who I was really close to. I was actually running his company. It was Desk.com. He left to become a venture capitalist. And I was like, you will call me. And he did. And I went into that fund, and they went in early to Robinhood, and it made a lot of money. So it sort of proved out the thesis that this is yet another place where, this is a generalization, but mostly the white guys are funding the white guys and getting more white guys rich. Like, it's sort of the cycle continues to run fairly aggressively. And of course, there are people that infiltrate and exceptions and wonderful people that are trying to change it, but generally felt like the wheel was going that way. And I think Malin had come to a similar sort of realization, right, Malin? I mean, do you want to describe how you got there?
Yeah. So, I've always, all my careers, starting out as an intellectual property attorney who specializes in patents, right? Like, I'm used to being the person in the background, right? Quietly with her head down. And I noticed a few things, which is, as I started to spend, my company was very successful. It went from 0 to 100 million in public in 3 years, but I was such an outsider to venture. I actually didn't even realize that was unusual. But what was then happening is, as I started, we actually took the company private again and sold it to private equity after 10 years. And what I realized is that, I started to meet more and more founders, and most of them were white males. And they kept wanting to talk to me about my experience. They're like, how did you grow the revenue? How did you sell this? And sometimes when you're immersed in it, you don't even know that you have skills that other people don't have context for. And so it's like, wow, I actually know stuff, right? That people want to know about, because, you're just so heads down in the background. And then what I quickly realized, and then I looked around and I said, because to me, even though I was in a venture-backed startup that was successful, it was a niche, unheard of, area. And so I was always very intimidated by venture, which is like, wow, these people are so smart. They're always tweeting to each other, and they know how to solve COVID and world hunger, right? And they tweet to each other in all kinds of crazy ways.
They sure think they do.
Yeah, I know.
They sure think
there's a lot of noise. Yeah.
There's so much noise. Twitter, VC Twitter is
Yeah.
entertaining.
Absolutely.
And so, but it was so, it was intimidating. It didn't feel accessible. And I thought, well, gosh, it revolves around founders and VCs, but I very quickly realized I'm like, they need to hire operators, people like me and Layla who have built and scaled up businesses and built them
Mhm.
into billion-dollar businesses. But what I realized, it's not that they were trying to leave us out. It's just that naturally our networks don't intersect. Like they
Mhm.
don't know people like us, because the last thing that we want to do is, because women are taught to be perfect at everything that we do. So we give 150% to our day job, and whatever's left, a lot of us are parents or daughters or whatever. And so whatever's
Stereotype.
left is, you're not going to go at 5 o'clock to go to happy hour to go meet these guys. And they're mostly guys.
Mhm.
And the thing is life is about relationships. If you don't know people and you don't intersect, it becomes very difficult to do things. So having always dealt with unsexy businesses and being, there weren't that many women in patents back in the day, was it sort of married all of my pet peeves about what's wrong with the world, as well as how you can actually solve this, which is if we could get people like me. And the thing is we all tend to know people like you, right? Which is
Mhm.
like women operators in the enterprise. I happen to know a lot of them. And so it's like, we could find an efficient way to bring them into the venture ecosystem, I actually knew that the founders and VCs would want us as well. And so that's how Operator Collective came to be, which is that not because Layla and I, either of us wanted to be a VC. We love helping companies. It's something that's innate to us. I think that's, I'm generalizing, but women tend to like to give and to help. But the idea here is like, instead of this being just another women's dinner group where it's like, oh, we've had such a great time, it's like, we're going to make money together. Because if you can figure out a way to channel, like think about all of your amazing girlfriends, right? If you can
Mhm.
actually figure out a way, and that's what I did. I'm like, these people are
Yeah.
all amazing. We can't all quit and join a company, right? And start one. But if we could actually scoop off and like, and take bits of people and have it fit into their busy lives, as opposed to saying you have to quit everything and then just do this. It's like, that could be incredibly powerful. And I knew it would be successful, that people would want us to invest. And then most importantly, I think is, well, there's two more importantly things. The next thing is that it would be incredibly fun, right? And then the third thing is, it's like, we're going to make a shitload of money doing this too, because we're really
Yes.
good at what we do. So that's how this all came about, on my side anyway.
Yeah, that's incredible. And there's so much learning and wisdom in it. And plus, it's like you both are such amazing community nurturers and builders. And it's truly inspiring to see that, and how you kind of brought it all together for the Operator Collective. So both of you, from transitioning from the corporate to the startup ecosystem or world, was that gradual? Like, and Malin, you've touched upon that, but what was that? With that big leap, should I call it leap of faith, or just how did that come about?
Um, well, I mean, for me, running the App Exchange, my job hasn't changed that much.
Yeah,
Yeah.
true.
I mean, which I had no idea when I was running the App Exchange that I was good at this, but I spent a lot of time telling people what to do, or like, if you want to get big, you need to do this. If you want to grow, your pricing is whacked. That's not going to work. Like your marketing is stupid. So I just spent a lot of my career doing that. So now I'm doing it with people that I really believe in, who are solving problems that I genuinely care about. I know everything about their business. I mean, within reason, but we're a hands-on investment team. Malin and I, there's lots of things about venture that people don't talk about, but a lot of venture capital firms are really competitive, right? Like the partners compete with each other and who brings in what deals. And we don't play that way. Like every deal is both of our deals. At different times, our companies need different skill sets, and we like flex and unflex, whatever the equivalent of that is. But
Yeah.
when they need Malin more, Malin flexes in. When they need me more, I flex in. But in general, like we're both very up to date about everything that's going on across the portfolio. And then we have a supporting partner our operating partner, who is the head of HR at Hootsuite and Duo Security, sort of comes in as well. So I think that's one of the things we're doing much differently is we're like, I still think I'm an operating executive. I think nowadays, I never think of myself as a venture
No,
capitalist.
I can barely even say the word venture capitalist. And like I sort of
Hear you.
like and the fact is like Layla said, is we actually run this like a company. And so our product, right, is and our customers are the founders. And we do everything we can to make them successful. And that's how we make money, right? And so yeah, it's okay. I don't think we're actually venture capitalists.
I mean, we totally are, but I don't relate at all either. I mean, I think the
We're not
other
your
thing
typical ones.
that Malin tapped into there, and you sort of mentioned on the community front is most venture capital firms are very secretive about their LPs, right? Like I'm an investor in a number of firms. I have no idea who the other LPs are. I never have met any of them. I get an email every quarter that tells me what's happening. It's fine. You know, that was my expectation. We really flipped the model on its head there. And I got to give Malin full credit on that one. Like she was like, we got to be super like, because our LPs are our differentiator, right? The fact that when we invest in you, we can help you in all kinds of ways. And then where you need, if you know, sometimes in a startup, you need a half an hour with the head of sales who's done it twice before. That will save you 2 months and $50,000 with a giant consulting firm. And you'll get the answer faster and it will be better, right? And we can provide that, which other firms just sort of claim to be able to provide, but really can't.
And along those lines, having done this, like this is my fourth startup. It's my final startup. And as with Layla, what you don't realize is like everything that I've done up until this point was actually preparation to make me be able to do this. And same with Layla. She saw every single software company that wanted to be a software company in the past 11 years, right? Because they all went through the App Exchange. That kind of pattern recognition is invaluable when you're investing. It's just that when you're in the midst of it, sometimes you don't realize like actually, right, everything I've done has helped me be very good at what I do now. And so having done this multiple times, I also knew that as founders, it's very hard to even put together an advisory board or even a regular board to recruit people or hiring your executive team beyond the same people that you know. And we had a lot of ulterior motives with this, which is like by doing this, we knew that we could actually influence both the culture of these companies and diversify the employee base and help them from the ground up, but not in a way that's just like tacked onto the side, but truly help them because, you know, we've made intros, very warm intros. And also we're like, to people who have ended up joining as early employees. And the thing is I also knew it was very, very hard. Like if you're a white male founder who doesn't have the same networks that the three of us do, then, and you really want to diversify your employee or your board or whatever, it's like, what are you going to do? Do a random LinkedIn to the person that you found who you have no idea whether or not they actually are looking for another job right now or would be open to it, and be like, really, my startup at about the other startups is really good and is going to be successful as opposed to the 99% that are going to fail. And so what we do is we make it safe, right? We make it comfortable, we make it accessible. So when Layla goes to her friend, which she just, there's a head of marketing, a CMO that she just put in, which is like, this is a great company. We've vetted this. We decided to invest it. We worked with the team, blah, blah, blah. And so it becomes a lot easier so that those networks that typically, don't intersect because we're making them intersect, but in a way that also feels very natural.
That's amazing. So can you speak a little bit about the model and the focus for Operator Collective? Like what does your day-to-day look like? Is it talk? Yeah. So
go ahead, Layla.
Our day-to-day. That's it. Different all the time because of COVID. No, so here's the model. We raised a $52 million fund. We have over 130 LPs. A large number of our LPs are operating executives. So that's what Malin was sort of getting to. And if you look on our website, you can see everyone that's in it. We're very open about that. 90% of our LP base is women, 40% are people of color. The whole premise of the fund was, if we can change who the investors are, we can change the kind of companies that are being built, right? And we can help build companies that we want our kids to work at, that we feel good, that are representative, that look like the world we all live in, not, some weird Stanford infused kind of whatever. God bless Stanford, but you know what I mean.
Yep.
So thesis wise, we invest in enterprise B2B startups. So, they have to have some, repeatable revenue. They have to have some product market fit. We tend to invest on the earlier side, although we are stage agnostic. So we've gone in later in a number of companies that we had a high conviction and loved the founders and whatnot. So, I mean, our portfolio is up on our website as well. I think that's another thing about our philosophy that is different than a lot of venture funds. And that is we're very open about what we're doing. We're actually trying to educate everyone along the way so that venture becomes less of a, ooh, what's, how Malin was sort of saying, like, they're so this and they're so that. Not really. It's actually very easy. I mean, look, there's risk. It's like gambling. Let's be clear. It's not, you can't just do it willy-nilly. You have to have some thing, but there's a lot to it if you start paying attention and unpacking it. And so we're really open about what we do too, and keep all that on our website and our blog. So I encourage all of you to look at that too. It would be helpful.
Because if you think about it, right, it's like some of those very successful VC partners, the ones who I was, slightly intimidated by previously, it turns out the only thing they've ever done was start as an associate in a VC firm and then work their way up. Whereas the rest of us who are operating, we've hired like sometimes hundreds, I mean, collectively, we've hired hundreds of thousands of people. We've bought like millions of dollars worth of product and software. We've had to navigate. How do you navigate internally in an enterprise to get something done? It's the same. These are the same skills. And so it turns out that those are pretty useful when you're looking at vetting companies, when you're looking at what companies to invest in. And then once they're in, it's like, how do you help make those companies successful? This is why when Layla says, this is my same job I had at App Exchange, which is like, yeah, you get a company in and you want to make it successful. You want them to, and that's what you do. And so it's not as inaccessible and it's challenging. And look, we work our butts off. The thing is, as soon as we meet a founder, right, we're hustling. And so but it's like, we're it's still early days, but our portfolio is doing quite well. And it's working because it turns out we collectively have a really lot of great skills and background.
No, it makes perfect sense. I think it's a brilliant model because being an operator and having done it, and I'm surprised other venture capitalists think about it. But this is, like you said, it's a skill that's absolutely necessary from like starting to growing companies. So cool. Diversity is a big focus of yours. And how do you think, how do you think about changing the entire landscape? What does it look like for you?
I mean, look, our general philosophy on this is there's no finish line when it comes to any of this. And I think I learned that in Equal Pay. I think we've all learned that along the way. We continue to be very vocal about what we're doing and look for help in amplifying that message from all of you, right? Whether that's Twitter or LinkedIn or wherever you do your socialing. But I do think also we look for opportunities to elevate others. And that's really been the premise of the whole fund from the get-go. If you look at, I mean, a number of our LPs have gotten board seats because we've introduced them to companies. A number of our LPs have gotten new jobs because we've introduced them to new companies. We started Black Venture Institute, right? We, after George Floyd was murdered, we got together and decided we wanted to really focus our energy. I mean, look, there are less than 75 Black people that can write checks in venture in the United States. I mean, it's a pretty appalling number. So we set out to address that and then worked really hard to put together a sustainable program that we run with Black VC and Salesforce Ventures and University of California at Berkeley. So, our commitment is built into the way we run our business. This is who we are. Malin and I aren't going to work again unless we're working towards something bigger than just ourselves. Like, we're done with that. We're in the middle of our life. We get to sort of define who we want to be now. And this is just who we are.
Yeah.
Do you think, Malin? What would you say? Anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I've said, right, everything else has been preparation to this point, and this is the last thing I will do, which means I will do this until and then until I can't do it anymore, because it is it takes a lot of the learnings of the past, which is like, and also you look at one of some of the inequities, right? And the things where it's an uneven and playing field, and how do we write it? And one of the things that we wanted to do here was, for so long, why it's so hard for women and people of color is that there is this structure that's in place in this infrastructure, and we have to, when we make the women and people of color conform to it, right, to say to succeed, here's what you have to do. But it's really hard because a lot of us are parents, right? A lot of us are dealing with extended family, other things, and so what we did is, you know what, we're going to shift the model on its head. Instead of like being a VC fund where we just have a community of operators who we bring into the VC fund, it just doesn't work that way. We literally rebuilt this from the ground up to optimize, to be able to bring in these operators from diverse backgrounds so it will fit into their lives, as opposed to saying, okay, you have to drop everything you're doing and conform to this structure. And so by doing so, because, you know, widespread change is only going to happen until we make more money, right? So what we are committed to doing here is expand wealth creation. So it's not that same group,
Yes.
a homogenous group, you know, the PayPal founders, you know, nothing against them. We co-invest with them, but they were the ones who are getting rich again and again, and also deciding which companies will be funded and which ones will be successful. And then of course, the natural networks are the same people again and again, so that we knew if we could build this where we had these operators from like phenomenal backgrounds, and that if we built that, and then because you tend to know people like you, it's 90% women, 40% people of color of our 137 operator LPs. And if we do that, I knew, right, that we could invest in virtually any company we wanted, because I also know the hustle that these people bring to it beyond the background and skill sets. And so by doing that, we're not going to create a different ecosystem where we're just investing in women and people of color. We're investing in founders from all backgrounds, all genders, right? Humble, lifelong learners who share our belief that culture, diversity, and operational excellence are a key part of building truly great companies. Are these the kind of founders who are creating the next Zoom, right? And like Eric is incredibly humble, and we're fortunate that the whole Zoom cluster is part of the fund. And then like, are you building the kind of company that we would want to refer our friends to work at? Because that's what we do. Are you building the kind of company that we would want our kids to work at someday? And so we believe that literally by doing this, we're going to change the face of tech from the ground up, as opposed to waiting until there are 1,000 people, right? Or 10,000 people, or even 100 people. And so this is what gets me and Layla up and the team up every day. You know, beyond the fact that like, it's incredibly fun to be Layla's partner.
I know.
Incredibly invigorating. It's like, we are making money. We're making money for other people. We're educating, we're sharing, and we do believe that we're literally going to help change the world. And so like, there's nothing else that I want to be doing.
No, absolutely. And I have no doubt you're already starting that, and it'll, yeah. So thank you again for doing that. But one of the things that, what was and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's for the first fund for you both and first time fund managers, right? What was the process of like getting people on board and writing checks to yeah. And then, yes. So I'd love to.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm an intellectual property attorney by training, right? Not someone who's ever been a you know, a GP of a fund, or even full-time part of it. Now I had exposure to it as part of SaaStr, because SaaStr has a fund as well, but I wasn't an investor at SaaStr, but had been around this. And so what it is like, I think, you know, and I'm going to generalize again, is women are really good at learning and talking to people and because I'm not someone who just jumps in and be like, oh, let's put together a venture fund, right? I'm pretty meticulous. I've launched a lot of products and businesses, as has Layla. I'm meticulous about like product market fit, pushing the limits, questioning. And because when you're an outsider, I actually think you have a lot more to bring to the table than if someone who's grown up in venture. Because if I'd grown up in venture, I probably would have listened to all those people who said, oh, you're never gonna be able to do this, because it had never been done before. But because I was an outsider, like I either just didn't believe them, or I listened to them and said, okay, if that's what everyone thinks, I've got to figure out a way around it, because other people are going to think that too. So I actually don't think that you should just ignore the naysayers, because a lot of naysayers are actually very, very well-meaning people who are trying to give you advice. And if you don't know, like, what obstacles you're going to run into, you don't know how to actually make your product better or your business better. And so that's what I did. So a lot of things that people told me, which is, oh, you've never been a VC before. Okay. So first of all, what's your track record? Tiny little track record. In fact, our first institutional investor, Kellogg Foundation, who I'm incredibly grateful for, was like, I got to tell you, like, we just assumed your track record was 0. It was so small. I'm like, I got that. Thank you. Which is unusual. But it was like, okay, but I need to compensate for that, because why would people give us millions and millions of dollars if it's not just like, oh, she's really smart, she'll figure it out. So what we did was, it's like, okay, you know what? Not only do we have these operator LPs who have all this, but most of us have not been, 70% of them had never invested in venture before. And so we brought on Magdalena Yasil and Dan Scheinman, 2 of the most successful, experienced, longtime enterprise investors, first investor in Zoom, first investor in Salesforce. And fortunately, we both happened to know to Magdalena through different ways. And then Dan and I had known each other at Cisco for years. So it's like, okay, it's not like, oh, don't worry, I got this. It's like, no, let's figure this out. And by the way, they make us better. They make me and Layla better investors because of their experience that they bring. And we tap them regularly. They're incredibly generous with their time. But the fact that like we get to learn venture investing from these 2 people is pretty incredible. Yeah. And then we're fortunate also to have a lot of other sort of friends of, right, who are mentoring us as well. And so anyway, so that's how it started, which is I was like, if we could build this product, if we could build this, I know that people will let us invest. But then how do you raise money beyond just individuals? Because everyone said, you know what, you're going to be able to raise probably like a $5 to $10 million fund, which is okay for a first time fund, but you're never going to get institutional investors. And, but you know what, I got intros to them, and it turned out that in our first close, we actually ended up with the Kellogg Foundation, who deserves a lot of credit for signing on. And it was literally me and a PowerPoint and literally nothing else. And so what you do is you look at what the roadblocks are going to be, or what people are going to say, and then you find a way around it. And then I knew, again, because we've all built a lot of products and businesses, it's like, how do you compensate for that? How do you build product market fit? How do you build something that's easy to buy, which is founders to take your money? How do you make it easy for LPs and operators to be able to join? Because the hurdle, and Layla can talk about this in a second, which is it was so hard for individuals to join your typical venture fund. So we had to figure out how to make it accessible. And so as a result of that, and I got to tell you, it was a result of a lot of people helping us along the way, including the fact that, so Layla was at Salesforce full-time when I first started this. And what Layla has brought to the table has been enormous to this. And so luckily when she decided to leave Salesforce, she was like, she was close to becoming a CEO somewhere. And I sort of said, you're kind of good at this, like really good at this. I think you like it. And so, all the people on our team have really helped make this what it is. But Layla can talk maybe a little bit about how we created accessibility for the operators.
Yeah. Can I just acknowledge you too for your humility? It's just for how much you've accomplished, and it's so, yeah, it's amazing to see and hear. So thank you.
You're a sweetheart. Yeah. I think one of the things that was interesting about the fund, see, I had been in the room at Salesforce and watched all those guys invest, and so I had started. But Malin sort of mentioned this, but it's worth noting that right before we launched the fund, I did like a survey and we asked our LPs, have you ever invested before? And over like 75% of them came back and said, no, I've never invested before. And these women are ballers, right? These women run like $1 billion businesses, giant, these are not like, these are real movers and shakers. And then the next question was, if you haven't invested before, what was the reason? And the primary reason they came back with was no one asked. And what do? You just like start calling people and be like, I'm going to angel invest. Like there's no sort of remedy for how to do this. So I think that really articulated the thesis. But look, initially it was hard for people. It was hard for certain people I thought for sure would be in, were like, nope, I'm not doing it. And I was like, are you crazy? Like, what are you talking about? Like, this is what we've been waiting for, like this sort of a thing. And then other people really wanted to join for reasons that are like, equal pay related or sexism or racism or what have you. simply didn't have the capital, because the typical buy-in in these funds tends to be around 250, right? Like that's roughly how people buy in. But a lot of people are like, I can give you $250,000. Are you crazy? Like I'm trying to buy a house, or like I need to like save my money for my kid to go to school, or whatever the thing was. So I think, we started seeing more and more of that. We started talking about it, and we came up with a scale that was sort of based on a number of different factors, but essentially allowed us to ratchet up and down the LP contribution amount between, we have people that came in at $10,000, and then we became people that came in at multi-million dollars, right? Like millions and millions of dollars. So there's sort of a different variance. But we did that because one of the things, I mean, Malin normally says this, but I'll say it this time, like we could have built a white Asian lady fund all day long. Like we could have filled that thing, no problem, from like dialing out of our Christmas card list probably, and phone books, right? That was not the plan, right? So we were pretty intentional, and we asked for help. We asked people along the way, like, please introduce us to your Black operating friends that are interested in investing. And like, we did a lot of things that I think a lot of people probably would not have done. And this was, we're talking like 3 years ago. We were doing this a while ago. I can't believe how long it was now, Mel. It's all mushing together with COVID. But like, what time? Where are we? But I think, if I were to say something about the way we did this, we were super deliberate. And every time we came upon an obstacle, like I remember calling Malin and being, I have to have this person has to join. Like I cannot do it if she's not in. Like it's one of the, and I was like, and she can only give 10,000, and that's a stretch. And then that sort of was the beginning of this conversation around, okay, let's figure out a scale, because this is going to keep happening. And so I think that was another thing. I think also like this is a really important partnership, and that all of those are built on deep trust, right? And that takes work and nurture. And we were lucky that we knew each other for a long time, and we had that familiarity. And then we worked really hard on building that partnership and that trust. And we're also having a really good time, which makes it easy, right? It's always fun. But even at moments when things are tense or there's something like, there's a deep understanding that we are both completely committed to each other. We are both completely committed to this, that we are, yes, we are making money and we are investing in companies and all that stuff, but we are also, there's a broader mission for what we're trying to do. And that is we want to change the way venture capital works and who's in it. Right. And so that's good stuff. That's fun.
Truly democratizing access to wealth creation, I feel, which a lot of people get left out of. So thank you again for doing that. I have a question that came in. So before I go to mine, maybe we'll take a question. And to our attendees, please feel free to chime in with questions anytime. But this is from Joanna. I love the operational / hands-on approach. With this model, does your fund have to limit the amount of startups you take in? Does that change the risk tolerance of the startups you choose to invest in?
So Sushi, before we answer that, because I think we're the only ones who can talk, is your microphone is a little bit funny right now, or is it just me, guys? Or Layla, can you? Yeah, it's a. Oops, now we can't hear you.
How about now? Can you hear me?
Perfect. That's great. So I guess I'll get started, and Layla can add on to this, which is, this is not quite the question first, but first we have to, yes, we're a venture fund, right? So legally we're a venture fund, which means we do have to follow, as much as we can be creative and push the limits, you still have to comply legally with the venture fund, which means we have a limited number of LPs that we can have per fund and things like that. And so it's with a $50+ million fund. The idea here is there's a lot of different strategies. I looked at a lot of different strategies. There's your typical seed fund type of strategy. And like Layla said, we're stage agnostic, although we tend to focus on early stage because that's kind of where we like to play, as well as the valuations are lower, obviously, than in a growth stage startup. And so where we, so your typical seed investor, if it's a seed fund and just a seed fund, they tend to be actually fairly rigid the way that they invest. They usually say, okay, I need to have, because the failure rate for most seed funds is incredibly high, because the earlier you get, the riskier it is, because you have less data, you have less visibility, and lots of times the earlier you get, it's a team bet. And so when you look at that, a lot of seed funds say, okay, we can't have the valuation more than $10 million or $15 million. We have to own at least 10, 20%, because we're going to be, and so they can only invest in this little box. And that can be fine, and that can work. And a lot of really successful seed stage funds do that. And we co-invest with some of them. So that's one of them. And then you basically just do the math, right? For, okay, how many can you do? Now we we both love data and spreadsheets and models, not to rigidly abide by them, but because they're helpful. And so I looked at all of these models, back in the early day, to say, what kind of fund are we going to be? Talked to a lot of people who were multi-stage, who were seed only, who did Series A, who did Series B, and ended up throwing all those out and saying, okay, I'm going to create my own model here and see what it looks like. So we have a little bit more flexibility, but what we did know that we wanted to do was, there's some also early funds that will do like, and again, successful. You just have to kind of pick your strategy and kind of stick with it. There's this one investor who we co-invest with, who's great. He's called like the fastest check writer in the West, like literally like 250, 250, 250. And that's what he does. And what he does is early pre-seed and $250,000 checks, and just writes them really fast. And so he's in all these really great companies. Of course, there's going to be a number of failures as well. And so they'll do something that's higher volume. So our approach is a little more selective in terms of, we have a number of core companies that we invest in, where we'll do, 500 to $1.5 million or so invested for, and we obviously look at the valuation to decide what our ownership is. And then we'll do a number of sort of supporting investments, which in some ways you can think about it as Leila calls it, our collective angel portfolio. They're a little bit too early, but the founders are really great. Oftentimes it's like 3 engineers in a room, or, a woman who just left as a CISO of, this organization, and she's totally badass, but we really want to help her, but we can't quite invest because we're not a pure sort of seed or pre-seed investor. And so we'll put something in there. And so it's a limited number of our core investments. And then we have probably the same number of supporting investments that we help sort of nurture them. And some of them will end up turning into core investments. And so, but it certainly is not let's just put $250,000 across the board. Again, it can be a very successful model, but it's not ours. What we also like is when there's product, we see the beginnings of product market fit, and you start to move beyond the founding team and say, hey, now I need to make some executive hires. I mean, look, we're operators, like we know how to do this. We can certainly help them earlier, but this is where it's like really fun. You can start to tap the operator network, and you can do this. And frankly, I would say that we're, collectively, this group is probably better at it than most, because we've all done it.
Yeah. Leila, anything to add?
No, I just said, yep.
And how do you get the operators in the community engaged with the startups? Is it like one-offs, or are they advisors, or all of the above, or?
So it sort of depends. Malin and myself and the team, Ambrosia and Ruthie, our head of marketing, we take, we do the lion's share of the heavy lifting there. Mm-hmm. Most of the operator LPs are super busy, right? They have day jobs and their families and other responsibilities. So we're careful with their time. We will often do a one-to-many type of thing. Like last week, we did an office hours with Christina Kozmowski, who ran customer support at Salesforce and then went and ran it at Slack. And so she sat down with all of the CS leads and CEOs in the portfolio and sort of broke down how to think about customer support, right? So we offer stuff like that. And then if one of them is like, oh my goodness, I have a big hairy mess, Christina will jump on the phone with them for half an hour. So like we do stuff like that. We try to be, part of the reason why the collective works so well is we're very cognizant of people's times. Like, for example, I asked someone to do diligence like 2 weeks ago to diligence something, and she emailed back. It's like, sure, I'm on maternity leave, but sure. And I was like, yeah, no, just forget, ignore this email. Like, but it shows a commitment level of the LP base that even when they're not working, they're like, oh, you guys need something? Okay, we'll try to help you, which we're super grateful for. That's the secret sauce. I mean, I always said the secret thing about Salesforce wasn't really the products or the people that worked there, but more the people that sort of surrounded the product suite at the customers and sort of in the industry. And we're lucky because a similar thing is happening with Operator Collective too, which is nice.
Yeah. And
that's-
people, no, go ahead, Madeline, please go ahead.
Oh, just along those lines. And this is what I mean, like when we built this to have product market fit on all sides, not that just the founders would want to take our money, but how do we make the system easy so that these busy operators who are mostly women and mostly have kids can make it fit into their lives, which is, and also because we're women and we're conditioned a certain way, we also don't like to sign up for things where we can't carry through with our obligations, which I think is a good thing in this world. But that means that, hey, like we just won't sign up for something because you don't want to disappoint someone. You want to be able to carry through on your commitments. And as women, if we put our money into something, generally we want to help and be involved. It's not just, and maybe, you know, all kinds of things involved. And so when we did this, it's like, there's actually no minimum time commitment, which is very liberating because that allows you to spend as much time as you want because you know you can always step out. And the other thing is instead of like, you know, Erica, you're the only CRO in our thing. So every time we have a question about a CRO, we go to you. No, we actually have 12 of you. And so it's okay because we expect you're going to be on maternity leave. You should be having babies, right? If you want to, you should be, you know, taking time off to do whatever. And so that's what I mean. It's like, by having built a lot of businesses and products, you just take that same sort of skill set and mindset to say, okay, how do we do this so that we can have this work and adjust the system?
That's amazing. Incredible. My next question would be about, you both have incredible experience in like building large companies, hiring a lot of people, building large teams. And I'm going to quote you, Melon, on something where you said, if you're hiring for a cultural fit, you're not optimizing for a successful company. So how do you think about, like, when you're advising startups, or for that matter, from your previous roles as you were building teams, how do you think about building teams and being intentional about diversity or inclusion or whatever it is that's close to you and important to you? How do you bring that into like action?
Yeah, definitely. And so, if we've all been in organizations where, you go through all these interviews, and I think a lot of us have ended up working with, a lot of the dominant homogenous group. It's like, oh, he's a great guy, we should bring him in, right? It's like, someone you want to have a beer with. And so that's cultural fit, right? I do think that you should hire for a values fit. Because it is very different, right? Layla and I are very different. You name it, like Laverne and Shirley, like who else, what else? I mean, we're very different, but we're also very complementary, but we deeply, deeply share the same values. And the thing is like when I did not want to have a partner or any of the people. I was like, this is what I mean by building like a company. I'm like, the last thing I wanted was to hire someone like me. Like, why would I possibly hire someone like me? Or why would I partner with someone like me? Why would we bring someone on the team? And that's the way actually a lot of VCs are, which is they're trying to hire the same people who can source all their deals, do all this and do this. It's like, no. It's like, I know all my weaknesses, right? Or a lot of my weaknesses in the areas that I'm not as strong. And so Layla is extremely complimentary to me. And so when you look to hire, to always be like, is this like, because I feel comfortable with this person? And are you comfortable with this person because it's someone that you went to the same schools with, have the same background, want to go have a beer with, et cetera, or dig a little bit deeper. But the thing is I also knew that it's difficult. It's difficult to find those people. And how do you break the ice? How do you make it comfortable? And so that's why we make those intros and ultimately, and we do tend to make intros to people who are like us, which tend to be women and people of color. And so it naturally happens because I believe that that's the way. You can't force diversity because if you even end up with the person getting an offer, the person's not going to succeed if it's forced and it's not natural and you don't have a values fit. And so what we do is we take an active role both in making introductions to people who don't necessarily look like them. And then also when they're there, we're a community to help make sure that they're successful. And Ambrosia, who's our our operating partner, who Layla talked about, is phenomenal at working with our portfolio companies to do this, because, you know, she was the right-hand person to Duo Security, and Doug Song, who's the CEO and founder there, who is also an LP. And he's actually the one who introduced us to Ambrosia. But Duo was known for its phenomenal culture, right? But it is something that needs to be front and center and deeply important to the CEO from day one. And the fact is, if it's not, Layla and I and Ambrosia are pretty good at figuring out that, you know, this is not really the kind of company that we want to be investing in, even if it might be wildly successful, because we're not going to work this hard to make people successful who we don't feel are actually going to make the world a better place. And not saying like you got to go volunteer at the soup kitchen every day, but like the building like a company like Zoom, where you treat people well, you treat your customers well, people want to work there. The CEO is like nice.
I know. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Eric, one of my favorite people for sure. It's truly admired. Yeah, him throughout how he leads is just incredible.
And I mean, I'm fortunate to have known him for 20 years back when, you know, Cisco WebEx, and he's exactly the same person. I mean, I probably a little bit less sleep these days, but like, he's exactly the same humble, like giving, caring person. And so that's the standard. It's like, you want us to fund you? Are you going to be the next, you know, Eric Yuan in Zoom?
Yeah, amazing. Layla, anything to?
No, I think she covered it. I think she got it. I mean, I think that kind of nailed it.
That's amazing. No, thank you. One of the things that I feel like have dealt with my entire life is this feeling of like self-doubt and limiting beliefs, which a lot of women are faced with. How do you overcome that? And how do you both, of all people, have great life experiences? And if you've faced that yourself, or what advice would you give to women to just kind of get out of our own way, if you will?
You just have to keep working on it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you and I were talking about that article from a long time ago.
Yes,
right?
yes.
Yeah. So I wrote an article about how I felt stuck, and I basically got myself stuck, which was true. I think it's easy. I think also society puts us in those places. I don't think we're crazy in making it all up. I think sort of the way we're pushed to believe by everything that exists, we sort of assume someone's doing us a favor as opposed to we earned our spot. So I think it's a recalibrating exercise that we all have to do. Like, I was talking to someone the other day, she's thinking about taking a new job. She was telling me how much she hates negotiating salary. And I was like, yeah, me too. Everybody hates that. I was like, you're not like, no one's like, yeah, let's go negotiate my salary. Like, no, you know, I was like, that's not the point. Like, you have to do it anyway, like eating your vegetables and flossing your teeth. Like, so I think that imposter syndrome and doubting yourself, I think all of that remains prevalent. Someone asked me, I actually don't feel it as much as I used to. I think because we work on an all-female team, and I do really feel deep trust and partnership with Malin in a way that I haven't felt with anyone else professionally. You know, we sort of, our objective is to make money and raise the fund and be very successful and help our companies, but we're both, to her point about being values aligned, we really couldn't be more different. I mean, I'm like crazy. She's sort of stoic. Like, you know, we really, like, on the surface, everyone's like, you two are very different. But, you know, we're both, our parents are immigrants. We're both raised in the Bay Area. We both like had to struggle with our own shit growing up and sort of rectifying all that. We believe in the same stuff. Our kids come first. That's a huge part of our fun too, that like, we take care of our kids. Like, we prioritize making sure they're sorted, and we can, or else we don't work well. And we all kind of get that. And so we give each other space to do that. Ambrosia, our operating partner, has a 2-year-old. Sometimes, you know, no one can watch her. Like, okay, we all back off. It's just, it's different. I was talking to someone the other day and I said, I've been running on Salesforce time sort of for so long now. And I'm just now starting to understand what operator collective time feels like. And I like it much better, right? It's just but yeah, it's a lot of this too. You have more control over your career and your life than you think you do. I remember a lot of times, like in my early career, being like, oh, I can't do anything with this. I'm so stuck, and I have to just make this revenue. And there's some truth to all of that. But the truth is, when you make changes and you take big risks, often the best things happen.
Mhm. Amazing. Lila, oh, Malin.
Yeah, I actually don't have that much more to add to that, which is, you know, I think in the early days of your career, you need to learn skills, right? You need to get the experience, and and that's important because you have to. At this point, I feel like, you know, we've accomplished enough, and but certainly because I wasn't like this earlier, but now it's incredibly liberating because, like, I actually just don't give a shit what anyone thinks.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't. Because you know what? At this point in my life, it's like, I know that what we've built is amazing. I know that I have surrounded myself, right, with the most amazing, brilliant A+ people around. Like, we're really good at what we do. But I have to tell you, it's taken a long time to get to that point, because in the early days, you know what? You do have to care what people think, because you have to navigate, the large corporation or the enterprise. But you take it all. Arlen Hamilton always calls it this, you're taking receipts, right? It's like you're seeing what's happening, you're learning, and you're seeing like what you would change, right? And how you're going to change the environment. Because like at Operator Collective, this is not about like, you need to go negotiate your pay. It's like, no, we take care of people because it's the right thing to do. And we've seen this happen now with our portfolio companies. We have one of our portfolio companies at the last board meeting. I loved it because 2 individuals were proactively getting actually 3 of them were getting a raise and an additional equity grant. And I was pretty sure I knew the answer to it. I'm like, so-and-so, did they ask for it? And he says, no, but they have gone above and beyond. And like, I couldn't have been happier, because this is what I mean about, we should not make people change to conform to this corporate world. It's like, you have to ask for what you have to get. You have to do this and you have to do this. And yes, you do, because most of the world is like that. But you know what? We can slowly start to change to say like, you know what? You will reward good people. You don't have to, you don't have to claw your way to the top, because it will be recognized. And so I was incredibly proud. I don't even think I told you that, Layla, that I asked him that. And the thing is like, and yeah, they have been busting their butts and hitting way above their weight, and they deserve it. And I was really happy to see the CEO do that.
That's beautiful. I think you're creating a world that I want to live in. It's amazing. It's beautiful. Yeah, just so incredible. But that leads to my next question. Like, how does one become a part of this incredible ecosystem or world that you're creating? And yeah, and are there, for folks that maybe have never even thought about investing, for them to know that this is an option for them, or a similar option, like how does one get started? Any advice?
Yeah. So like, well, I would love to, like, although this may happen someday. Well, I would love to be a mutual fund, right? Where like anyone could buy in and there's no limits. The fact is, it's a venture fund. There's time periods during which you can do it. And there's a limit to the number of people because of, Reg D and all this other stuff. And so, but so it doesn't mean that the only way to get engaged is to be a partner in a venture fund, right? Or a limited partner and investor. And so I would say, if what we're doing at Operator Collective resonates with you, like, please be part of our community. Go to operatorcollective.com. At a minimum, sign up for our mailing list. Follow us on social media. That's the other thing. Layla's always been good at Twitter and social media. And I tweet when Layla texts me and says, tweet. And so, but I have to say, if you want to get into venture and in the startup world, you need to understand how the rest of that world is communicating with each other. So get on Twitter, follow us, follow Operator Collective, and start to follow some people. And then you'll start to understand this bizarre Twitter thing that we're talking about in terms of how these people tweet to each other. And so be a part of our community. When we have events again, we'll have events. We have things that are open to, to people who want to register. And if you have interesting startups that you've run across, feel free to refer them to me. I mean, oftentimes why I love, like, over half of our deal flow actually comes from our LPs. And the thing is, it's not just like cold deal flow. Lots of times it's like, you'll come to me or Layla and be like, I used to work with this person. She was my best engineer, my best salesperson. She just joined this startup. And I think it's really cool. Like, do you want an intro? Like, so contextual intros like that are huge as opposed to like just random. And so again, it's bringing that network together. So I would say, just follow us, be part of our community. And Layla, anything to add on that?
No, I mean, the other thing I would say is if you are Black, I would also apply for Black Venture Institute. That is a great way to get a crash course in venture and also get a lot of exposure to the people that sort of are running that ecosystem. So, just another resource out there if people are interested. We have another cohort coming up, but we'll be doing another one toward the end of the year. And just in general, we're busy, but we're approachable too. So, let us,
Yes.
deals, what have you.
For that. Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. Absolutely. No, finish if you were, sorry if I interrupted, Layla.
No, that was it. I think the other thing, a lot of this has to do, we don't celebrate each other enough. That's one thing that we've, my entire career I've spent trying to celebrate other women and noticing how few of us do it for each other. So, let's figure out ways to celebrate each other. We're always looking for ways to promote good things that are happening to people all over the place too. So let us know what's happening with you. So that's what I would say.
Beautiful. Thank you. Well, I can't believe we're almost at a minute left, almost at the top of the hour. Any last parting thoughts? How have you been dealing with the new normal, and has it changed anything? Has it changed your perspective on how you look at things, how you look at the world, and anything that we can learn from?
I think that the main thing has been flexibility and sort of an openness to change. If one thing the last year has proven is like nothing is what it seems. Nothing's super dependable. So trying to be as empathetic as possible and accepting of like, okay, what is today looks normal, tomorrow will not look normal, right? And fires and winter storms breaking pipes and so much hatred and so many weird things going on in the world. So, I think that's mine. I don't know, Melon, what would you say?
No, and COVID has hit everyone differently and hard, right? But the one thing that I say that I really do like from this is I think, for so long, I go back to this theme, which is we all have had to conform to the corporate norm. Mm-hmm. And I think what that corporate norm has realized is you need to flex a bit to conform to the individual, and especially for women and people of color who have, who are, again, I'm generalizing, juggling so much outside of the work, is that I think the world, I'm optimistic, is going to be a little bit more flexible in terms of the corporate world with like Salesforce, right? Going after they just made all those really tall, expensive buildings. And so I'm very encouraged, right? I think it also led us all to really think about like, how do we want to be spending our time? Who do we want to be working 100 hours a week to make successful? And so I'm very encouraged. And I also want to say, Suchi, thank you so much for inviting us and for all that you've done over the years with respect to startups, with being, a supporter of mine, right? And always being there to boost me up. So thank you for doing this.
Oh, my pleasure. And I am truly grateful that both of you chose to spend this hour with us. So I'm very appreciate it very much. And let us know what we can do as a community to help you as well. So we're always here and appreciate your time. So
thank you.
Yes.
Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.